Welcome to another show. Today is our look at science fiction television in the 60s Part 1.
If you love me, just listen to me.
No, you listen to me. This machine is predicting our future. Do you think I could just walk away from it?
Let's begin with Twilight Zone. It actually debuted on CBS in 1959, but lasted until 1964 in its original run. The show produced 156 episodes, most of which were a half-hour long. In November 1962, CBS contracted Twilight Zone as a mid-season January replacement for Fair Exchange, the very show that replaced it in the September 1962 schedule. In order to fill the Fair Exchange time slot, each episode had to be expanded to an hour, an idea which did not sit well with Sir Ling, nor the production crew. Ours is the perfect half-hour show. If we went to an hour, we'd have to flesh out our stories, soap opera style. Viewers could watch 15 minutes without knowing whether they were in a Twilight Zone or Desilu Playhouse, Sir Ling stated. There were 18-hour-long episodes which are rarely seen in syndication. The Twilight Zone followed in the tradition of earlier television shows such as Tales of Tomorrow and science fiction theater.
I hope you enjoyed our story. It was fiction. It did not happen. Not as far as we know.
Radio programs such as The Weird Circle, Dimension X, and X-1, and the radio work of one of Serling's inspirations, Norman Corwin. The success of the series led to a feature film, a TV film, a radio series, various literature, theme park attractions, and various other spin-offs that spanned 5 decades. There were several attempts to revive the Twilight Zone. The first was in 1985 for 2 seasons on CBS, then a 3rd season was created for syndication, giving it a total of 65 episodes. The show then moved to UPN in 2002 with Forrest Whitaker as the new host. It lasted 1 season for 43 half-hour installments. Jordan Peele gave us the most current version with 20 episodes starting in 2019, available on CBS Access. There was a major motion picture in 1983.
What are you doing?
Nightmare at 20,000 Feet was remade, and this consisted of 1 new episode and remakes of several other episodes. Gold Key brought us 91 issues of a Twilight Zone comic book. Others who published Twilight Zone comic books include Now Comics, Issues, and Dynamite Comics.
There is nothing wrong with your television set.
Right on the heels of Twilight Zone came The Outer Limits, an American television series that was broadcast on ABC from September 16, 1963, to January 16, 1965, at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Mondays.
Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume.
It is often compared to The Twilight Zone, but with a greater emphasis on science fiction stories. It is an anthology of self-contained episodes, sometimes with plot twists at their ends.
If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical.
Each show began with either a cold open or a preview clip, followed by a narration over visuals of an oscilloscope, using an Orwellian theme of taking over your television. Later episodes used one of 2 shortened versions of the introduction.
We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur.
The first few episodes began simply with the title screen followed by the narration and no cold open or preview clip. The control voice was performed by actor Vic Perrin.
For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set.
The original title for this series was Please Stand By, but because the Cuban Missile Crisis had happened less than a year earlier, executives thought it might make people fearful of an air raid.
You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
Writers included creator Stevens and Joseph Stefano, screenwriter of the film Psycho, who was the season 1 producer and creative guiding force, and who wrote more of the series' episodes than anyone. Future Oscar-winning screenwriter Robert Towne, who wrote Chinatown, wrote The Chameleon, the final season 1 episode. A pair of season 2 episodes, Soldier and Demon with a Glass Hand, were written by Harlan Ellison. The latter won a Writers Guild Award. Season 1 combined science fiction and horror, while Season 2 was more focused on hard science fiction stories, dropping the recurring scary monster motif of Season 1. Each episode in Season 1 was to have a monster or creature as a critical part of the storyline in a villain of the week format. Season 1 writer and producer Joseph Stefano believed this element was necessary to provide fear, suspense, or at least a center for plot development. This kind of story element became known as the bear. This device was, however, mostly dropped in Season 2 after Stefano left. The series earned a loyal audience in its first season. Some viewers were reported to take TV sets with them if they had to be away from home, so they wouldn't miss an episode. However, the second season fared rather poorly in the Nielsen ratings after moving from Monday to Saturday night, where it competed with Jackie Gleason. Producer Joseph Stefano chose to leave the show after the first year. He realized that competing with the more popular Gleason would kill his show. However, the series retained a following for many years after its original broadcast. Many decades later, horror writer Stephen King described it as one of the best programs of its type to run on network TV. Like The Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits had an opening and closing narration in almost every episode. Both shows were unusually philosophical for science fiction anthology series, but different in style. The Twilight Zone stories were often like parables, employing whimsy, irony, or extraordinary problem-solving situations. The Outer Limits was usually a straight action and suspense show which often had the human spirit in confrontation with dark existential forces from within or without, such as in the alien abduction episode A Feasibility Study or the alien possession story The Invisibles. The Outer Limits was also known for the moody, textured look of many episodes, whereas The Twilight Zone tended to be shot more conventionally. Several Outer Limits episodes are often misremembered by casual fans as Twilight Zone episodes.
And he took the stopwatch and he hit it, and everybody else in time froze but him.
That's an Outer Limits.
No, that was a zone.
That's an Outer Limits.
That was a zone.
Notably, problem-solving episodes such as Fun and Games and The Premonition. Vic Perrin, the control voice, once stated that almost all of his opening and closing narrations were recorded in one or at most 2 studio sessions. He had no idea what the episodes were about, but often joked that he had the God-given ability to sound authoritative on things that he knew nothing about. Gene Roddenberry was a big fan of the series, being a regular visitor to the set. He would use many of the crew, cast, costumes, and props on Star Trek. Like Twilight Zone, The Outer Limits also experienced a revival. However, the Twilight Zone revivals were not as popular as the original and didn't last that long. 2 only lasted for 1 season. The Outer Limits, on the other hand, experienced a revival in 1995 that lasted for 7 seasons and 152 episodes.
If the toy maker loses the game, his world will vanish, but he has the power to build a new one.
Just like Star Trek, Doctor Who began in the 1960s and is still going strong today. The show began in 1963 with several actors playing the Doctor. The first Doctor was William Hartnell. He was succeeded by Patrick Troughton in 1966, who would continue in the role until 1970. Adventures who serve as audience surrogate characters to ask questions which allow the Doctor to provide relevant exposition. When Hartnell left the program after 3 years due to ill health, the role was handed over to character actor Patrick Troughton.
This is TARDIS. TARDIS?
It stands for Time and Relative Dimension.
Rides at high altitude with the U.S. Air Force's rocket plane, the North American X-15. The spaceship's pilot is a 450-year-old anthropologist from Mars. Tim O'Hara, a young newspaper reporter for the Los Angeles Sun, is on his way home from Edwards Air Force Base, where he had gone to report on the flight of the X-15. Returning home to Los Angeles, O'Hara spots the same silver spaceship coming down quickly, after which it crash lands nearby. Unhappy with early script submissions from creator/producer Jack Cherdick, the network hired script Dr. Sherwood Schwartz to lend a hand. Schwartz changed the Tim-centric scripts to focus more on the Martian, as a fish out of water, on, as he termed it, this backwards planet. The pilot featured Mrs. Brown's daughter Annabelle as Tim's love interest, but she was dropped to allow Tim to become more of a playboy. In a major change, Mrs. Brown, who was multi-talented, intelligent, and suspicious in the pilot, became decidedly more scatterbrained. My Favorite Martian, which premiered in the fall of 1963, was the first of the fantasy situation comedies prevalent on American television in the mid-1960s, featuring characters who could do extraordinary things. Predating My Living Doll, Bewitched, and I Dream of Jeannie, Ray Walston admitted later that he regretted taking the role of Uncle Martin. He took it for the money, and felt that it prevented him from getting substantial roles for many years. He enjoyed working with Bill Bixby, and they became lifelong friends. The theme music was performed on an electro-theremin by Paul Tanner, a former member of Glenn Miller's band. It motivated Brian Wilson to hire Tanner in 1965 and 1966 to work with the Beach Boys on their landmark hit, Good Vibrations. Gold Key Comics put out 9 issues of a My Favorite Martian comic book, which are available through my comic shop and eBay.
We're going to go back to the beginning, to 1965. No, to 1962. Because you see, John Robinson was not the first patriarch of the family Robinson that was lost in space. Long before the Irwin Allen television series, there came Gold Key Comics. Space Family Robinson was an original science fiction comic book series published by Gold Key Comics. It predates the Lost in Space television series. Both are loosely based on the novel and similarly named movies, The Swiss Family Robinson. While most fans of the TV series dismiss the comic for not being like the show, smart Lost in Space collectors are beginning to appreciate the historical connection. It also should be noted that while the TV series degenerated into a campy children's show, the comic remained serious throughout its run. In issue 14, dated October 1965, a letter appeared in the letter column which mentioned that Space Family Robinson would make a great TV program.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll take it from here. Lost in Space is an American science fiction television series, created and produced by Irwin Allen, which originally aired between 1965 and 1968 on CBS.
Danger! Oh, what? You mean to tell me that if I press this button, something's really gonna...
Oh dear. Where are we, William?
Oh, Dr. Smith, it looks like we're back on the deck of the Jupiter 2.
What? No, not again.
The series was inspired by the 1812 novel The Swiss Family Robinson. The series follows the adventures of the Robinsons, a pioneering family of space colonists who struggled to survive in the depths of space. The show ran for 83 episodes over 3 seasons. On October 16, 1997, the United States is gearing up to colonize space. The Jupiter 2, a futuristic saucer-shaped spacecraft, stands on its launch pad undergoing final preparations. Its mission is to take a single family on a 5.5-year journey to an Earth-like planet orbiting the star Alpha Centauri. The Robinson family consists of Professor John Robinson, his wife Maureen, and their 3 children, Judy, Penny, and Will. The family is accompanied by U.S. Space Corps Major Donald West. The Robinsons and Major West are to be cryogenically frozen for the voyage, and they are set to be unfrozen when the spacecraft approaches its destination. Dr. Zachary Smith, Alpha Control's doctor, is revealed to be a saboteur working on behalf of an unnamed nation, with which he communicated under the code name Ioli's 14 Umbra. After disposing of a guard who catches him aboard the spacecraft, Smith reprograms the Jupiter 2's B9 environmental control robot to destroy critical systems on the spaceship 8 hours after launch. Smith becomes trapped aboard at launch, however, and his extra weight throws the Jupiter 2 off course, causing it to encounter asteroids. This, plus the robot's rampage, causes the ship to prematurely engage its hyperdrive, and the expedition becomes hopelessly lost in the infinite depths of outer space. Smith's selfish actions and laziness frequently endanger the expedition, but his role assumes less sinister overtones in later parts of the series. The relationship between Dr. Smith and the robot has similarities to Star Trek's Dr. McCoy and Mr. Spock. An uneasy friendship at best, downright animosity at worst.
Calling in those dreadful alliteratives to keep him down so he wouldn't expose me.
You computerized cloud.
Bubble-headed booby.
Jabbering Judas.
Probes of faces indicate very little
And
infiltrate
probes
life.
have been known to be wrong.
Doctor, are you speaking scientifically or emotionally?
In your case, it would be about here.
The fact that my internal arrangement differs from yours, Doctor, pleases me no end.
In early 1968, while the final third season episode Junkyard in Space was in production, the cast and crew were informally led to believe the series would return for a fourth season. Allen had ordered new scripts for the coming season. A few weeks later, however, CBS announced a list of returning television series for the 1968-69 season, and Lost in Space was not included. CBS executives failed to offer any reasons why Lost in Space was canceled. The most likely reason the show was canceled was its increasingly high cost. The cost per episode had grown from $14,000 during the first season to $165,000 during the third season, and the actors' salaries nearly doubled during that time. Further, the interior of the Jupiter 2 was the most expensive set for a television show at the time, at a cost of $350,000. The series was revived several times, including an unsold pilot, a new series on Netflix, and a 1998 major motion picture with John Hurt and Gary Oldman. Innovation Comics published a Lost in Space comic based on the original series. Lost in Space was Innovation's best-selling property, outselling all their other comics combined. The comic only managed to run for 18 issues, 2 annuals and 1 of 2 issues of a miniseries, however, but not because of poor sales. Innovation's ambitious projects couldn't keep ahead of their bottom line, and the company went out of business. While this left a major story arc unresolved, a trade paperback entitled Voyage to the Bottom of the Soul was later published, completing the story.
Watch it.
It's custom of tribe. When boy go out with girl, always drag.
Drag! Well, on the other side of the hill where I come from, we treat women nice and polite.
It's About Time is an American science fantasy comedy TV series that aired on CBS for one season of 26 episodes in 1966 to 1967. The series was created by Sherwood Schwartz and used sets, props, and incidental music from Schwartz's other television series in production at the time, Gilligan's Island. Astronauts Mac Mackenzie and Hector Canfield travel faster than the speed of light, resulting in being sent back in time to prehistoric days where they have to adjust to living with a cave-dwelling family led by Shag or Shad and Gronk. Their children were 18-year-old Myler and 14-year-old Breer. Tribe Chief Boss and his right-hand man Klon were always suspicious of the astronauts. Ratings were impressive for the first few weeks on the air, but they soon plunged. Schwartz retooled the series beginning with the January 22nd, 1967 episode. The astronauts repair their space capsule and return to 1967 with Shad, Gronk, and their children in tow. Boss and Klon make their final appearances in this episode, which also introduces 2 new supporting characters who remained with the show. Alan DeWitt as Mr. Tyler, manager of the apartment building where Mac and Hector live, and Frank Wilcox as General Morley, their commanding officer. The prehistoric family begins adjusting to life in the 60s, reacting to the unfamiliar surroundings and setting up home in 20th century Los Angeles. 7 episodes were produced with this new premise before the series was canceled at the end of the season. According to Pat Carty, who played Greer, CBS considered reversing their cancellation decision after ratings improved during summer reruns. However, Imogene Coca and Joe E. Ross had already committed to other projects, officially ending the series. That was our show for today. What did you think? Do you have a favorite science fiction show that came from the 60s? Let me know in the comments section below. Also, I'd be honored if you subscribe to my channel and check out my Carl Vincent Vampire Hunter franchise also in the comments section below. Until next time, this is Kevin Given saying live long and prosper. May the force be with you and keep reaching for the stars.